same energy consumption level, the world would be ruined. I mean, that's my assessment. It's common sense. You just don't have enough resources in the world. They are being exhausted at an enormous rate. So we got to wake up and conserve, and not put undue emphasis on consumption, and reduce our consumption and live within our means. And from the religious point of view, I must warn you, because I must be quite honest with you. In the highest philosophical level, in the highest conception of Hinduism, God has no obligation to mankind. There's none, no obligation. He would say, I've given you wisdom, I've given you a brain, you use it. Don't depend on me. At the personal level, yes, we say, God save me, God save me. But the higher level, the impersonal God, is He has created the world according to certain rules. The rules are, it's called science. You understand it and maintain the world according to that. Otherwise, God is not going to come and save you. If you want to kill yourself, He says, go ahead. You know, it's scary, but that's the truth. And I got to tell you the truth. We are responsible ourselves. And Atmanyo, Atmano, Bandhu, Atmaiva Ripuratmanaha. Atma means self. The self is the self's friend as well as its own enemy. So in the final analysis, man is responsible for his own destiny. Yes, God helps in the form of the laws of science, but He's not going to hold your hand. He's not going to, although it's a person.
Can I ask you a question? Do you perceive,
do you, either of the two of you, perceive that Christianity teaches God will save us? By the way, there was a speech by a United States Senator denying the climate change reality the other day who said, well, we can in fact do as we please because God will save us.
Well, at the personal level, everybody thinks, all Hindus, most Hindus think, God will save me. You know, save me, God. You know, I've said that. I was brought up as a kid, save me, God, I would say. By instinct. We all believe in a personal God because we want to believe in a personal God. But now, I know better now. The law of science works. Because law of science, physics, the law of gravity, the law of radioactivity, special relativity, general relativity, and so on, electromagnetism, I've studied physics. They're universal. That is the language of God. Okay? That's the language of God. Listen to it. Okay? So God may not take personal in each person's affairs. He may not. Be prepared for it. That's what I'm saying. But the common belief, of course, like in all religions, we want God to save us. But we got to do our share. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I went to a funeral once, and I did note there was a bit of a difference in the style of when they were saying the prayer over the person who had deceased, and the sense I got was that they believed that person was definite entry into heaven. For Muslims, that's not a given. There's no definite entry into heaven. If any Muslims are teaching that, that's actually incorrect. You actually have to really earn your way. There's no grace unless you've actually somewhat earned it. But at the same time, at the end of the day, no matter how much good you do, you have to rely on God's mercy. So there's a little bit of a different attitude. You can never have that level of belief that you've got a free pass at any way. But yeah, so I guess that would be basically my answer for that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question now. And Americans tend to be very focused on the present day. What's going to give us an immediate benefit? But we also need to think about, does the world end with us? So the question It has been stated that future generations will feel the effects of climate change more than we do now. According to your faith's teachings, do we have any ethical obligations to future generations?
Yeah, undoubtedly. In fact, again, I'm going to use some verses because I think they say it best. There's a verse that says, "And then we made you heirs in the land after them," other people, "to see how you would behave." And it says, "Do they not travel throughout the earth and see what the end of those before them was? In strength they tilled the soil and populated it in great numbers, more than these have done. They came to them apostles with clear signs, which they rejected, but it was not God who wronged them, but they wronged their own soul." So we definitely wrong our own selves, and I think that we wrong other generations coming forward. We definitely have a responsibility. There's no doubt about it. We're supposed to, obviously, when we have offspring, when other people have offspring, we're supposed to take care of everyone. I mean, it's just, I think it's an understood almost, if you believe in your stewardship or being a trustee, a correct trustee, that yeah, you're destroying everything for other people as well.
Yes, in Hinduism, in Hindu thinking, you cannot take your salvation for granted. You got to work for it. Just because you believe in something, you have faith, you're not going to be saved. You got to work at it. By doing good things in life, good works is very important. And we have what is called the doctrine of karma. That means what goes up must come down. You see, what you do in this life, if you do good, you will get back that good in return in some form or another. If you do bad, then you suffer the consequences. Not only that, we know through heredity, through our genes, what my forefathers from 100 generations, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, those genes are still in me, and those genes are still in you. If you have good health, part of it is due to those genes, strong genes. They did something right. You have blue eyes because of those genes. You have brown eyes or whatever, or you have a straight nose or other kind of nose, a certain type of shape. These are all, you see, so you owe something, a lot to the past. So what you do in this life affects there's the theory of cycle of births and deaths. You see, in Hinduism, the soul is immortal, the body, it dies. So what happens to the immortal soul? See, Christians also have, other religions also have the concept of the immortal soul. So what happens to the immortal soul after the body dies? Hindus say that that immortal soul is born in another human form. And if you have done good in this life, more good than bad, then you will be in a better position in your next life. And vice versa. If you've done bad things, you'll be in worse position in your next life. So yes, we do have an obligation to the next generations and next umpteen generations. Yes, and the climate change is going to get worse and worse if you go on in this manner. Climate, it is a science, it's not a matter of faith. People have studied it. There are articles and there are programs on the PBS and other channels. It's a fact of science, just as gravity is a fact. You throw a stone, it comes down because the earth attracts it. It's a fact of science. It's not a fact of religion. It's not a fact of faith. It is the same everywhere. The same in the US, in India, or Mongolia, or Pakistan, or in Iraq. Same everywhere. And same for all faiths. If you jump, you're going to come down. Nothing to do with faith. Because that is the law of science, which is the law of God.
I think implicit in the scriptures, the gospel teaching, is a concept of intergenerational justice, but we overlook it. I would say that we, in fact, don't behave that way at all. I'll tell you a story. A few years ago, after my conversion on these subjects to creation care, I posed the idea of going to the annual March for Life with a banner. It's kind of a brainstorm, and I asked a friend of mine by the name of Jim Ball if he would carry it with me, and he said he would. And he says, do you think how we'll be treated? How do you think people will react to it? I said, I have no idea. It'll be very interesting. It'll be a test case. So we put it together, and the picture of our banner ended up on the front page of the Washington Post. It read, mercury poisoning of the unborn. Do you care? In other words, we were suggesting to all of those marching at the annual March for Life on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade that mercury poisoning of the unborn, which comes from coal-burning utility plants, admitted into the air, falls to the earth through rain, absorbed by fish in our lakes and rivers and our oceans, absorbed by fish, eaten by humans, consumed by humans, to the point where 1 out of 8 of our fellow human beings is born with a form of mental retardation that comes from mercury poisoning. It's what led the Obama administration to push for mercury regulations on coal-burning utility plants. Anyway, the idea, though, that we have an obligation to the next generation, I don't know that most Christians act that way. I don't think most of us have a concept in our brain of that way. We think linearly, beginning A causes B, B causes C, and results in D. That's linear thinking. It does not include the concept of systemic thinking, which is required for sustainable thinking. In other words, sustainable thinking is long-term, and it considers the possibility that there may be factors which we don't understand that intervene in order to change everything. And so you can't simply count on A plus B equals C. That's linear thinking, it's Christian thinking, but it's not sustainable thinking. Does that make any sense? I think to have a concept of intergenerational justice of the future, you have to be a sustainable thinker who thinks long-term, who says there is no away. When it goes out of your tailpipe, it doesn't go away. There is no away. It impacts all of us in ways we don't even fully comprehend in our very bodies. And so, yes, we teach in Christianity, by grace you are saved through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. That's Ephesians 8 and 9. It's especially prominent in the evangelical world. Not by grace, not by works, but by grace. And it's that very grace concept which has led us to laziness. It's led us to conspicuous consumption. It's led us to arrogance. It's led us to the place we are in this world today, where the figures that you've cited are altogether too real. 4% produce 25% of the GHGs. And that, my friends, to put a fine point on it, is called sin. And it is called, idolatry.
Okay, thank you. We're running out of time, so I want to end this by, first of all, thanking all of you for being in our audience. In the ring, yes. And, we've had some very dedicated few here. I'd like to thank the Interfaith Council of Greater Richmond for providing the venue for this discussion that we've just had. There are several exhibitors here who address in various ways the issues of climate change. Please make sure that you take time to visit their tables before you leave. There are many people involved in various aspects of making this Peace Festival happen. You were introduced to them earlier. But there's one person who had primary responsibility for making sure that this panel discussion was well prepared, and that was Scarlett Sams. So, thank you, Scarlett.